Hi, I'm Carolina, your podcast host and expert womb healer. Over the past 5 years, I've served over 500 women to remove physical blockages in their bodies. We achieve this with Reiki. I believe healing doesn't have to be done alone, nor should it be. You will hear stories of healing, methods to heal with, and guest speakers covering taboo topics you won't hear anywhere else. Let's continue this journey of womb healing together. Hi, I'm Carolina, your podcast host and Reiki womb healer. Today we're talking about conquering the unknown, overcoming the fear of pregnancy. Before we dive in, I want to make sure that you are giving us a 5-star rating and review. Please take a moment. It's a great way to support our podcast. Another way to support the podcast is to screenshot your episode that you're listening and share it on your socials and tag me in it. My Instagram handle is called The Carolina Sotomayor. And I would also love to hear and know your thoughts about this episode. Today, conquering the unknown, overcoming the fear of pregnancy. There's 2 different kind of viewpoints that we need to address when we're addressing the fear of pregnancy. A person who has never been pregnant before, and also a person who has been pregnant before. And with the person who's been pregnant before, we need to address and honor perhaps they had a traumatic experience, and also maybe they had a loss, whether that was miscarriage or pregnancy loss. So understanding the fear of pregnancy, let's break it down. How do you actually do that? And I love when we just dive straight in and it's like, how do you do something? How to overcome the fear of pregnancy? First, identify the fear. What is the fear? And a lot of our emotions, we feel a lot of complicated things, but are we spending time to sit in it, reflect on it, write it down, and identify it and dissect it? So identify the fear. What exactly you fear of? Is it the fear of pregnancy and being pregnant and the person growing inside of you? Are you actually scared of birth and not pregnancy? Are you scared of feeling out of control and you don't actually have control, of how baby's going to grow? Or do you have fear over bodily autonomy and doctor visits? Or your voice is not being concerned? I think when we talk about fear of pregnancy, can we get more specific? Is there something that's about pregnancy or about your pregnancy experience that you're scared of happening or not happening? So identifying the fear, understanding where did that fear come from? Was it your mom? Was it your auntie? Was it a cousin? Was it a girlfriend? If I'm late 30s, I'm in the season where people are having my best friend just had her 5th baby. I have some friends that are working on their 2nd baby. I am in the season of just one and done. So you could be having lots of friends who are having babies, depending on their experience, could greatly influence what they share between friends. Movies, cultural influences are big. I'm Hispanic, but I know in different cultures, there is significant beliefs around pregnancy or things to be done in pregnancy. So you need to make sure what fears are coming up and where are they coming from. And now, as the age of the adult that you are now, do you believe that fear from the viewpoint as your adult self? Because a lot of times we react and have these fears from a younger version of ourselves. So for that, if I have scarcity issues or abandonment issues, I'm probably not reacting from my adult 39-year-old self. I'm probably reacting from a younger version of myself, from child self, of when I experienced scarcity or abandonment. So we have to look from a logical place and, again, being radically honest with ourselves. How am I reacting? Is my inner child screaming and asking for security and stability and safety? Or am I reacting from my adult self? And I think that that's important to understand and get to know. And if you don't know, it's okay. It's the beginning of your journey. And then what do you want to replace that fear with? So if we say, okay, my 39-year-old adult self doesn't believe that anymore about pregnancy. I could see how that doesn't resonate with me anymore. Saw that in a movie. I'm actually scared of the uncertainty of pregnancy, not necessarily pregnancy itself, just that there's so many variables, there's so many things I don't have direct control over. So what do I want to replace that fear with? Is I surrender to all the things that I don't know, but I know all things are working out for me and my baby. So that's my new belief, because fear is a belief, a limiting belief that you hold true. So what are we going to replace it with? That's super important. So when people talk about fears, what are you replacing it with? And then I think it's really critical. And then how can that new belief that you just put out, how can it be established? Are you going to say that daily? Are you going to put it up on your wall? Are you going to put it in your mirror? How are we going to make sure that that gets reinforced? And that's mostly applies to women who've never been pregnant before. So let's talk more deeply about the women who have been pregnant before and have had a loss or had a traumatic pregnancy experience. You know, how a person defines traumatic, painful experience during pregnancy is vastly different and varies from person to person. I had traumatic experiences in midwife offices. I've had traumatic experiences because I had a gallbladder surgery when I was 13 weeks pregnant. You know, I also had to make big decisions when I was pregnant, you know, with my horse and things like that. So it just depends on like what you define as traumatic. Understanding where that is and understanding is, are we carrying that forward? Do we need to heal that event? How much healing has been done? And then do you feel like it's been healed enough? Because you have choices in your healing. So you don't have to completely heal something or go at it very aggressively if you're not in a place for that. But it's really important to address, like, how are we going to mitigate this fear? So if you've been pregnant before, and most of the time when people have fears of pregnancy and they've been pregnant before, it's usually regarding a loss or it's regarding a lot of medical intervention or a lot of medical attention that's going to be needed, meaning like frequent doctor visits, a lot of inconvenience, maybe perhaps a lot of medication or IVs, things like that. Things that they don't want to endure again. None of those things are fun. Nobody wants to do that. So if we're going to talk about overcoming that fear, it's more about mitigation. It's never fair to tell a mom that's lost a baby ever that they would be in a carefree or blissful pregnancy ever again. I don't think that that's fair to say that's your goal. No, I think that if you've lost a baby and you've had scares of maybe, you know, where you've had to be frequently watched during a pregnancy, those fears are going to be valid every time that that person gets pregnant again. So what can we do to reduce her stress in between those appointments? What can we do to mitigate the fears with, maybe it's bettering the relationship with the doctor. Maybe it's switching doctors. Maybe it's the support that she gets on the way to the doctor or during the visit. There are certain things that we can do to advocate for that mama, whether you're her partner, whether you're her friend, her doula. There's so many things that we can do with better communication to make sure that this mama is better, well cared for. And I think that that is a different approach than having a toxic positive approach and being like, well, you should just aim for a blissful pregnancy. That's bullshit. If you've had loss and you've had pain, I don't think it's realistic to think that you're going to go into a pregnancy and not have any fears. No. So we don't want to ignore what has happened. We don't want to ignore and we don't want to honor the past. So whatever it is her fear, and it's come from her life experience, we want to honor her story and honor what has happened, because we're changed after hardship. We're changed after loss. So it's really important to see what we can do to make sure that we're moving you to a place of being less triggered or to a place of neutrality. I think it's really important to understand that looks different for every person. If I were to get pregnant again, I would probably have a lot of fear. Not because I would be scared of losing the baby, but because of the experiences I had with the care providers I had before. So I would probably switch to an OB and not a midwife because that would be more neutral for me. Midwives now are triggering for me. I would probably seek an OB that was more open-minded for energy work and herbalism throughout my pregnancy. I'd probably be working with a Chinese medicine doctor for holistic care. I would be more involved in the decision-making of my care versus being a yes ma'am patient like I was before. And that would allow me to be less triggered because I feel like I would be more empowered. So let's recap. Conquering the unknown, overcoming the fear of pregnancy is possible, especially if you're a first-time mom experiencing pregnancy or about to be experiencing it for the first time. And we just need to understand where those fears come from and come up with a new belief to replace it with. If you're a mom who's experienced trauma or loss before and you're trying for your next pregnancy, understand we just want to come up with a plan, an advocacy plan to move you to a place where you're not as triggered, or a neutral place where you're not triggered at all, if that's possible. And understand you're in charge. If you have any questions, I would love to chat with you about this episode and what your pregnancy and fertility plans are. You can, again, reach out to me on Instagram at the Carolina Sotomayor. And until next time, my friends, know that you're loved. It was an honor to connect and serve you this week. If you are a spiritually curious person wanting to conceive and heal blockages in your fertility, click the link in the episode description to learn more about the Fertility Foundation Collective. Until next time, my friend, know you are loved.